All right, give me the nod when we're ready to roll. Okay, welcome everybody. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Roger will lead us in that.
All right, ready? Begin. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Roger. This time I'd like to call the meeting to order. Individuals wishing to address the Board of Trustees are requested to complete a speaker card and deliver the card to City Clerk staff prior to the item being heard by the Board of Trustees. Please observe a 3-minute limit for communications, and once called upon to speak, we will request that you state your name and city of residence for the record. Communication from the public. This portion of the agenda is intended for general public comment on items within the Board of Trustees jurisdiction that are not listed elsewhere on the agenda. Please note that state law prohibits the Board of Trustees from discussing or taking action on these items. Please observe a 3-minute limit for your communications, and once called upon to speak, we request that you state your name and city of residence for the record. Ms. Duarte, are there any speaker cards from the public?
No, sir.
Okay. Meeting minutes, approval of minutes for the Pension Stabilization Trust Board of Trustees meeting of October 10th, 2022. Ms. Duarte, are there any speaker cards from the public for the meeting minutes?
No, sir.
Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? A motion was made by Roger Bradley and seconded by Kim Sitton.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. Item passes 4-0.
Thank you very much. Agenda items, trustee board meeting update and trust contribution recommendation discussion. Kim Sitton, Finance Director, will present this item.
Mr. Ellis. So today we have a presentation, just to remind everyone that, the agenda for today is we're going to talk about the board meetings and our Pension Stabilization Trust investment reports, and then talk about the fiscal year and results for fiscal year 22 general fund and any recommendations on contributions to the Stabilization Trust. So as a reminder, because this is our first time meeting in January, so just to refresh everyone, we have at least 2 public meetings per year, once in October after the CalPERS reports are received and reviewed. And the purpose of that meeting is to discuss those results and talk about the impacts on our unfunded liabilities and the results of the report. In January, this is after the year-end audit and financial statements are completed, and the purpose of this meeting is to discuss any pension stabilization contributions that we're going to recommend to the City Council based on the end of the year surplus, as well as our pension management policy. So as you can see, the trust value as of the end of November, which was the most current available when this was prepared, was $30,107,194. We actually just completed the December report as well, and it's grown another 190,000. So the December value is $30,297,233. There's good returns there.
Outstanding.
Yes. The Pension Stabilization Trust investment policy, as well as the investment reports, are both located on the Finance Department page on the city's website under the investments, and the website's listed there, as well as the investment reports are posted with the monthly council agendas, generally the second meeting of the month. Any questions before moving on to the next section? Okay, so for today's discussion, we're not going to spend a ton of time on this particular item, but just kind of want to keep it fresh in everyone's mind that future unfunded accrued liabilities are assessed by CalPERS each fiscal year, and we are aiming to pay off any new unfunded liabilities based on the payment schedule here. This is detailed in our pension management policy. From the June of 2021 valuation reports, which were received in 2022, there's always about a 1-year lag. The increase to our unfunded accrued liabilities was 0, and that's because they had taken into consideration the pension obligation bonds that were pending at that time. The next reports are expected to be received in about August of 2023, and of course, that will provide new updated information, and when we meet again in October, then we'll be discussing how to deal with any of those unfunded accrued liabilities.
CalPERS changes the discount rate?
They have not.
They were considering it or something.
Yeah, but they have not changed it yet. So if they do, that hasn't been approved yet. One of the discussions that we had in our pension management policy is targeting to pay off our bonds after 10 years of payments. So that would be after we've made the May of 2031 payment. So we have a schedule here of if we're gonna target those dates. If we paid it off between May of 2031 and April of 2032, we would owe about $75.4 million. And you'll see as we go through each one of these years, the amount needed to pay it off decreases by about $25 million. So paying it off at year 11, we'd need about $75.4 million. So we'd need to put aside $2.7 million per year into the stabilization trust in order to make that happen. That's based on, you'll see the footnotes down at the bottom. That's we are currently planning to contribute $2 million per year out of Measure X. And then this $2.7 million per year is based on an average assumed rate of return of 5%. So really we'd need to be putting aside an extra $700,000 in addition to the two that we've already got, designated that we're putting towards paying this down. You see if we pay it off in year 12, we'd need about $50.9 million. That would only mean an additional $500,000 being set aside per year. And with the $2 million we're already setting aside in Measure X, we're well on track to make that happen without a problem. And then, of course, if we waited until year 3, we'd need $25.8 million to pay it off. And at that point, we already have more than $30 million in the stabilization trust. So that really is something that could already happen at this point. The bonds are callable after year 10, and that's why the 10-year mark is on here. They are not callable before that time. Any questions on that?
So we're basically on track to pay off somewhere in between those 2 years, right?
So if we did nothing different, we would basically be ready to pay it off at year 12. The one thing though is that we're going to have to continue to have conversations at these meetings because we'll be to assess new unfunded liabilities and have to be balancing that out with trying to pay off the bond. So that's, at the moment, we don't have that new information, and so every year that will be a discussion that we'll have to consider is balancing those two out.
Yeah, if we got no new unfunded liabilities, we would be on track.
Right.
Because we are about as sure as death and taxes sure that we're going to get another assessment from CalPERS.
Yeah.
It's going to be quite variable, right?
Exactly. So now we're going to talk about the general fund financial results from fiscal year 2022. You can see that the unassigned fund balance, which is basically the surplus from fiscal year 22, is about $222,000. So it's a pretty low amount for fiscal year 2022 because we had some significant items that impacted our fiscal year 2022 budget. We had pension obligation bonds, we had negotiations that were completed, and we also had a pretty significant change in terms of our lease reporting that occurred in fiscal year 22 as well. So it's a pretty small amount. On average, over the last 5 years, the surplus has been about $5 million, about 5.3. So it's a more significant number, hopefully in future discussions when we're coming back and discussing those results. So looking at that, one of the things that we're supposed to discuss at the January meeting is how much of that surplus do we want to then designate or recommend to City Council to contribute towards the Pension Stabilization Trust. And on here I've got 3 different options included in this slide. Obviously there's lots more variables that we can discuss as well, but option 1 is to include nothing. Option 2 is to contribute half of what the surplus was from fiscal year 22. And option 3 is to contribute the entire amount that was surplus from fiscal year 22. One of the things, recommendation for option number 2 is kind of targeting about 50% of that surplus amount each fiscal year. I feel like that's a good, comfortable number. Again, like I mentioned, with future years, we're going to be having to balance out those unfunded liabilities as well as targeting to pay off the bond. So each year this discussion will change and be different. So that is the recommendation. Do we want to pause there and discuss that for a moment? If there's
Okay, any questions? Discussion?
other options.
Good?
Okay.
Good.
Good.
Sounds great.
So with that, what staff will do is prepare an agenda report for the City Council approval. We'll plan to take that at the same time we take our mid-year update, which would be the meeting of February 1st, and get council approval to contribute that amount. And then the next meeting of this particular group wouldn't be until October of 2023, once those new actuarial reports are received, and the date, of course, will be to be determined based on our schedules as we get closer to that date.
Okay. Thank you, Kim. Ms. Duarte, are there any speaker cards from the public?
No, sir.
All right. Do you have any questions or comments from anyone else here? All right. Meeting adjourned.
Beautiful. Thanks, Kim.